Well, I tell you what, for those of you that aren't familiar with the running community, Bill had 4 victories in the Boston Marathon, set a couple of American records there. He won the New York City Marathon 4 times. He is a local favorite. He's run the Bix. We'll find out how many times. 2-time winner. He won it in 1980 and 1981. I think the real reason we got Bill here is because of the Olympic boycott. Kind of a bummer deal for Bill, but it brought him to the Bix, and I believe it's one of his favorite races. 2-time winner, 2-time runner-up. Actually, I think a Masters winner. I don't know how many times. We'll find out. Bill will correct me on all the things that I said that weren't quite right. Bill set numerous American and world records. Not sure what still stands, but I tell you what, he's a fierce competitor. I've met up with him in a few races, and yeah, I can't hold a candle to Bill, but I'll tell you what, one thing that I do know about Bill is he's a down-to-earth, super nice guy who took time out of, he was on top of the world in the late 70s. I wrote him a letter. He wrote me back. And now, who does that anymore? Wrote me back and gave me some running advice. Anyway, happy belated birthday. I just turned your mic on there, Bill. How's it feel to be 70 years old?
You know, it's not too long ago, so I'm still assessing things, Tim.
Well, I tell you what, I was starting to get worried about getting a hold of you, but you did take a little bit of time from that storm out there in Boston and headed south,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, it was really tricky weather here. I was lucky. I actually got to escape down to Florida to the Disney World Marathon with my youngest daughter, Erica, and her cousin, Emily. So it was the 25th anniversary of that fantastic event, which includes not just the marathon, but a 5K, a 10K, and a half marathon. And so I escaped some, and that's what I often try to do is, finesse it with the weather. New England's like the Midwest. It's pretty tricky with your footing and everything, when you're a runner or a walker, of course the cyclist, it's very dicey, but it's good to be with you, Tim, and you got all the stats right, and I've been a runner since 1963, since I ran high school cross country in Newington, Connecticut. I'm from Hartford, just about 10 miles away, but I still love the sport, just as much, maybe certainly more. It's not as intense, being older and having one so long, of course, but I still love the sport. Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, before the internet, we go back a ways. Before the internet, I used to call out to Boston, get a hold of the police department, and find out if you won the marathon. And I'll tell you what, here's a question for you. When did you know that you had the gift?
You know what? I was a pretty solid high school runner and collegiate runner. I was not an All-American, like an Alberto Salazar or Craig Version from Illinois. Or Greg Meyer from Michigan, or Joe Benoit Samuelson, who was pretty high level, or Lynn Jennings from Massachusetts. I was one of these runners who was, I broke the 5-minute mile pretty solidly, though, in high school, and went to a great college, Wesleyan University in Middletown, and I had a roommate there, a teammate, actually two, who were both really phenomenal people in the running world. And one is Jeff Galloway, who has coached a couple of 100,000 Americans to run their first marathon. He became an Olympian after college, and my roommate, Andy Burfoot, he won Boston in '68. So I learned from those guys. And my coaches, actually, over the year, high school, Coach Frank O'Rourke, and then in college, Coach Elmer Swanson, and post-collegiately with Billy Squires. You know what, Tim, it was really when I moved to Boston and I saw the Boston Marathon, and then I understood what the marathon was all about. You have to see the race, a marathon or a race to understand it and see how intense these events are. Football is intense, but so is foot racing. And if you don't believe it, you just got to try it. you know that. You've been out there. It's probably, I think it's the most competitive sport in the world because this sport is all over the world. But what happened for me was I was a marathon failure. My first marathon, I dropped out, and but I then moved I joined the Greater Boston Track Club, and we had a great coach, Coach Billy Squires from Notre Dame University. He was a student there, great American miler, but became a coach for this new track club in Boston. There was a bunch of us high school and collegiate runners who wanted to keep running and see what we could do as we got a little older. And he helped me a lot, and once I started exploring the marathon, everybody improves, as you know, Tim. I mean, all runners, we all improve, and that's part of the draw of the sport. Not only that, you feel better. You kind of get your life straightened out in a certain way. And so after I got to, I had run the Philadelphia Marathon in '74, and I won that race. And once you start doing well, it's a huge motivator. And my teammates, we all pushed each other, helped each other. And Greg Meyer, for example, he went on to win Boston in '83. Alberto Salazar, he took Boston in '82. He was on the team. So there's a lot of really good teamwork. And that's really what you need. You need a training partner. And after, in '75, I won a bronze medal in the World Cross Country Champs. And Steve Prefontaine, American Olympian from Oregon, Nike's first athlete, he sent me a pair of racing shoes, which I had requested from Jeff Galloway, my teammate. And he sent me these shoes, and I won Boston. I started to feel after that cross-country race I could race anybody, and it came true. It was a fluky thing. I kind of lucked out, really, because I had a rocky start, but I had good teammates, and that and your coach, that's everything. That is everything.
I tell you what, going back to that, your big breakthrough, would you consider that'd be the '75 Boston, correct?
Yes.
42 years ago. I mean, I'm reading in your new book, which we will talk about. Actually, I've got your older book that you autographed for me down at Bix, just called Marathoning, but your new book, Marathon Man. Well, I've learned quite a bit. We'll talk about that in just a little bit, but I liked how you described yourself, or how you were described, a skinny blonde kid, a hippie with a homemade T-shirt and those huge gardening gloves on, not even a watch to check your time. Just hammering away, trying to bring the race back to America. You didn't want to let, it was Jerome Drayton, basically, that you raced. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. He was Canadian, and someone yelled, "Go Canada." And I love the Canadians, but I wanted to win it for the U.S., of course. and also, the course record was held by a British fellow, Ron Hill. So I had a great breakthrough that day. I broke his record and the American record, and it was, at that time, it was the fastest time in the world. So I was kind of riding the wave, surfing along, and it was fun. But it's a tough sport. But if you have your teammates, your friends, your family with you, you do it. You can do it.
I think it was a tough sport, but it got a whole lot tougher when you showed up. I think I think Jerome Drayton dropped out at 24 miles in that race, and you said that you were really ready. You said that you logged up about 537 miles in the month before Boston. That's about 17 or 18 miles a day.
Yeah, I was doing 2 workouts a day. All the top runners train twice a day, and Jerome got his change of fortunes a few months later when I raced him in Japan, and he beat me. We're good friends, and everyone shakes hands at the end of the race. This is the name of the game. You got to do it. And but that really did change my life, Tim. And I was able then to travel to races throughout the U.S., like the Bix race, and the Falmouth Road race in Massachusetts, and in Japan, and
I knew that the Falmouth is one of your favorites.
Yeah, Falmouth is a great race. I call it. It's kind of the East Coast Bix. There's about 12,000 runners there, and it's got a professional field. But most runners are running for their health and fitness, or they're doing fundraising in some capacity for some organization. And that race also is it's not as silly as the Bix. It's easier course than the Bix, but they're so similar. They're community events. That's what our sport. I mean, it sounds corny, but that's really the way our sport is.
Steve Prefontaine, he sent you those shoes. I think the shoes were called Boston '73. Did you ever get a chance to meet Steve?
I never met Steve. No, I never did. Frank Shorter did. Frank, of course, our country's greatest marathoner of all time, and
well, I don't know about that, Bill.
Yeah, but he beat me pretty good in the Olympics, I'll tell you, and he beat everybody. I think he's the best, and but we're good friends too, and but and so I think we had a little rivalry for a while when we didn't know each other that well.
Right. I think that Frank was actually with Steve the night
Yeah,
that he died.
right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, he was. He and Steve are good friends, and he and yeah, they were together that night. They had raced each other that day, I think, and yeah, it was a really tough story because Prefontaine, great talent, great champion, and he kind of was the prototype of what I think Nike stood for in a way, to like Nike said in that slogan, just do it, let's just try, let's give it our best, and it's simple when you do, and but it was a tragedy. He died in a car accident. He was only, I think, 24 years old, and it's just a tragic thing.
Kind of a rebel, kind of like you. A
Yeah,
little bit.
He was, because he wanted our sport to be more professional. He wanted the race organizations to be more professional and to respect the athletes, just like in any other sport, where athletes were paid. And we couldn't be paid. When I won the Boston Marathon and New York City Marathon, there was no prize money, So it was a little different. Today, you can make a pretty good living. The top runners are doing very well, but it is a very competitive sport, But Steve fought for that, and he spoke, along with Frank Shorter, before Congress, and about amateurism and professionalism and the pluses and minuses of both. And now it is a professional sport. At Boston and New York, the winners receive something like $150,000, and that sort of thing. So there is prize money in the sport, and that's a great incentive. Just like anyone else in the world, you want to make a living, what you do, And so when that changed, it changed the whole sport. The sport grew then. And that's true for the Boston Marathon and the New York City Marathon, And Boston in particular was very hesitant to change, because it's the oldest marathon in the world, 123 years old this April, I think. So they didn't want to change. Everything had worked the way it had for many years there, and they were nervous about changing, but they did, and the sport grew like crazy.
Back to your big breakthrough, the 75 Boston. I've got a picture down in my basement, a framed picture of you when you stopped to tie your shoe. You actually stopped, I think, 5 times during that race. I think you could have run 2:08 easy, but you always said you like to stop to take drinks.
I think the thing is, when your shoelace comes untied, you better stop and tie it.
But that's a great picture.
But I was flying high. I had a good lead. We had a tailwind, and I knew where I was. One advantage I had, Tim, I lived in the Boston area and trained on the course with my Greater Boston Track Club teammates. And Coach Squires had us out there on Heartbreak Hill doing repeats and everything. So Salazar was doing that. Greg Meyer was doing that. Joan Benoit Samuelson, who took Boston twice, was doing that. And anywhere you live, like if you live in the Bix area, if you can get out there, and run over those hills on the Bix course and know where you are. Once you know where you are, you relax a little bit. And everything is being able to, in the heat of competition, to just kind of run steady and not get too nervous and not run, make mistakes, So I had a good day that day. It made up for the times I had bad days. I dropped out 3 times, Tim, at Boston. I got to be honest.
Say that again?
I dropped out 3 times at Boston.
Well, I tell you what, you are a competitor. I read just a couple of years back at a half marathon, you saw somebody with a shirt that said, "I beat Bill Rogers in 1973 at the Boston." Didn't you chase him down?
Yeah, and he had come up to me before the race. This is at the Mississippi Blues Marathon in Jackson, Mississippi, and he had come up to me, and sure enough, he did beat me. I folded that day, and it was a riot. I said, "Holy cow! I don't meet too many people from way back then," and but I did see him at around 10 miles in a half marathon. I did catch him.
Yeah, I tell you what, the competitive juices kick in, don't they?
Yeah, I think our sport that's just natural. It's a human instinct to compete it's in business, it's in sports, and our sport is no different than any other. But it is there's tremendous camaraderie in the sport too, and I think you can see that everywhere. Like when I was down at Disney, I was at the finish line, and there were all these parents and family members. They're staring at the finish. They're waiting for their son or daughter or mom or dad to come in, because the sport has all changed. Over the last 30 years, it used to be mainly guys. Now it's 50-50 men and women. And so it really is a family sport these days. And it wasn't years ago. And I think that change to professionalism to prize money is what allowed that to happen. Then these, some bigger sponsors could come in, and they could really kind of push their fundraising within the community. And so you see it at Boston. They raised like $35 million for about 30 different groups, And so people have a drive then to get out there in the tough weather, and keep training,
I gotta say, were you at Boston when the bombing took place?
I wasn't there. It was actually, and it was ironic because it was the first time in about 40 years I wasn't at the finish line, either running it or doing some sort of activity, for the BAA, the race organization, or Hancock, John Hancock, who was the main race sponsor at Boston. But they told me the day before, well, we don't really need you anymore. And so I went home to do a run with my girlfriend, Karen. We did a run that morning. I live 35 miles or so west of Boston. We did a run, and then some of my friends, family members, called up and said, a bomb went off in Boston. And I said, no, it can't be true. What are you talking about? And I turned on the TV, and I could see on the sidewalk where the bombs had gone off, like a wet spot. And as soon as I saw that, I said, yeah, I know what this is. I knew what it was.
Bum deal, that was for sure. Do you mind if I talk about your family life a little bit here? I don't know. Is either your mom or dad still living?
My mom is still living. She is 94. And she actually became a runner at the age of 57, and then was a walker. And she's I guess. And my brother Charlie was a runner as well in my high school days, and is still a runner. He's a year older than me. I have two daughters, Elise and Erica. Elise is like 32 years old. Erica's 27. And they got into other sports. They were probably sick of seeing Dad always being at road races.
I was wondering if they took up the running. They didn't take up the running, huh?
Well, my youngest Erica did a little bit. She ran in high school one season of cross country and one of track. My oldest, Elise, last year at the Cherry Blossom 10 Mile in Washington, D.C., she and her fiance did run the 5K there, so she's kind of getting started. But I think, these millennials are a very active generation. Like my girlfriend Karen, her daughter's out there now. She's a Boston marathoner. She's run a 100-miler like you have, Tim. They're kind of exploring the world. They're not willing to be stuck in the past in any way, shape, or form. And that's true in their selection of sports, too. I think they're real explorer types,
We put limits on ourselves. That's the problem with this a lot of the time. We should just let ourselves go. Most people don't realize their full potential is what I'm saying.
I agree with you. And, what I love about the Olympic sports, running or walking or swimming or biking, everyone gets the benefits. Everybody feels better. You feel better mentally and physically. I mean, we are meant to move. And if we don't, then sometimes we get sick. And it's just a tough thing. I had a relative who was hit with diabetes, and it's just tough, the stories. But on the other hand, I really feel the U.S. population is changing. People want their health and fitness. And that's what I saw. Like when I was at Disney this past weekend, it's incredible because, and I've seen this for some years now, everywhere I go, in races like the Bix and Falmouth, the Cherry Blossom, the Crim 10 Mile, Michigan, all over the country. And it's also a global sport. So this is happening around the world. It's a classic thing, and I really do hope that the healthcare community will invest and become more and more involved in the prevention side so the American population benefits much more.
Now, I've met your brother Charlie. I think, if I'm correct, you have two other siblings. Is that correct?
Actually, three. I have two sisters.
I did not know
Martha
that.
and Linda.
I just knew Martha.
Yeah.
Martha, and you've got a brother, Jason, as well.
Yeah, actually, Jason was our best friend from childhood. He was kind of like a third brother.
Oh,
and he was
okay.
a runner as well. And so Charlie and Jason we started a little running store in Boston about 35, 40 years ago, and they ran it, and I kind of hung out there a lot. And mainly, I was going to the road races, trying to compete, you know. But Charlie was a good runner, and so was Jason. But it was, you know, in my book Marathon Man, my book is about becoming a runner and why you might quit, because we all three quit when we couldn't run together. So the story of our sport is, I think for everyone, you need someone to get out the door with, you know.
You need a little bit of motivation.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, reading your book, and we'll talk about that. Hey, I think you and I were a little bit similar. Hey, we chased butterflies and had butterfly collections.
Yeah, we all collected butterflies. When I was a kid, like 12 years old, we all made our nets, and that's how I got my start running. You know, I was running through these fields, dashing around, and you know, I was in the Boy Scouts. We were fisher people. We went fishing. We hiked. We rode our bikes. I think America's coming back to that. People are riding their bikes. You know, people are more active than for a while. We had a lull. You know, but now everything's changing.
Well, I tell you what, it's never too late. You were a 2-pack-a-day smoker.
Yeah, it's true. When I quit, you know, because I was always someone who needed my teammates. If I didn't, I wouldn't run. You know, and I didn't run. I quit for about a year, and but during that year, I was in Boston. I saw the finish of the Boston Marathon. I saw my old Wesleyan College teammates, Amby Burfoot. And I saw Jeff Galloway, and I learned Jeff had made our Olympic team. I said, "What? I used to run with Jeff. I mean, he was ahead of me. He could beat me in a race, but I knew them, and so it made them more. You know, it made it more doable once I'd run with these people. You know, and I saw the race itself, and I saw some other people. I said, "Well, you know," so I joined the Boston YMCA. And started running a little bit. So I'd run and then smoke a little bit. You know, it takes a while. It's tough to quit. And but the more I ran, the less I wanted to smoke. You know, and the more I got into running and started to go to races. You know, when you go to races, that's like the icing on the cake because you go with your friends. You know.
I did the same thing. Something's got to give when you're smoking and you're racing. You can't keep that up for very long. So something does have to give. You know, going all the way back to your big win in '75 at Boston, did you ever find the bicentennial trophy that you won that someone must have?
No, I have never found that trophy. It had a symbol at the top of a grasshopper. And for some reason, it was a symbol, an historical symbol in Boston on top of Faneuil Hall, which is the old marketplace in Boston. There's a grasshopper on top of it. So they made this trophy because it was the 200th anniversary of the U.S., you know. But in the hecticness after I won, it disappeared. I never saw it again. I don't know where it went. So maybe if someone finds it, they could send it back to me.
Yes, please. Any listeners out there that knows the whereabouts of a grasshopper-topped bicentennial 1975 Boston trophy, please give it back to Bill. I tell you what, Bill,
Wow.
you have got a great sense of humor because my brother was going around trying to, and he actually did run a marathon in every state, and he met up with you, I believe, at the Rock and Roll Marathon, and I was about to turn 60 years old, and he had Frank Shorter. He had a lot of people sign birthday cards for me, and you signed a card because the only time I was able to run Boston was in 1999. That's the year it was very warm. You were going for a record and got dehydrated. I think you dropped out right around Heartbreak Hill. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And I totally had a meltdown and basically limped it in, drugged myself in it like 5.5 hours. And so you wrote me this card that says, Tim, you nailed me in Boston, 99.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this race often goes, it's really, really true. Some of the toughest runners, they're not these so-called professionals, whatever, and they are professional, but you know what I mean. It's just an individual thing, and that's why I love to hang out at the finish line of Boston when I retired from marathoning, or at New York or anywhere. I love to see the runners come in, because to me it's like, it's incredible, because people are trying so hard to get to the finish, and you see some people. I've seen people crawl across the finish line. Others, it's not a problem. They run the marathon like, oh, ho hum, you know, and so there's this huge variety. But Boston, I would say Boston is the hardest marathon I've ever run out of my 60 marathons around the world on my legs, because there's a lot of downhill. So when you're running downhill, you really, you know, Tim, because you run it, your legs get tight and sore and beat up, you know. And but Boston is a thrill because of the history. You know, all the runners from Greta White, going back to Clarence DeMar and Johnny Kelly, who have run there over the 100-plus years. To me, the Boston Marathon is kind of like the Indy 500 or the U.S. Tennis Open. You know, it's one of these old, iconic American sports events. You know, and I love that feeling, race weekend.
It's got to be one of your favorites. How about other favorite races?
You know, I like New York City. I like the intensity of that race. The whole city comes out. It's like 2 million people are cheering you on. It's incredible. It's not an easy course. It's a tough one. I've run Chicago. Chicago is a world-class, very much faster course, and you can really move there because it's usually cool weather. And, you know, I've run in Europe and Sweden and in Amsterdam and in Japan and Kyoto and Fukuoka. I think it's an individual thing. You know, sometimes it's like your favorite race is your hometown race. So for me, that was Falmouth. In 1980, after the boycott, we all the athletes who were training for the Olympic Games, thinking about it, we got kind of crushed. So it was like, well, now what do we do? Well, that's where the push for prize money came from. We said, well, we don't have any power. We've got to make a living. We've got to start getting paid. You know, and at the same time, I was invited by the Corn Belt Running Club in Davenport, Iowa, there to run the Bix. So I go do the Bix every year. It's not getting easier, but it's pure fun.
I think you put Bix on the map. You made that race grow.
I don't know, but I just had a lot of fun when I go out there. Joan Benoit Samuelson comes out every year. My brother Charlie joins me. I had relatives living in Monmouth, you know, and even on the Brady Street Hill. So I have a lot of feeling about the race, you know.
You the first 2 years that you ran it, I believe those were course records.
You know, I like the course. I like the hills, and Frank Shorter came in and we duked it out there. Rob DiCostello from Australia. They do a fantastic job putting that race together every year, and I think you know, it's an American iconic race, but it's not an easy one. It is not an easy one.
You are one of my biggest motivators, but I tell you what, how about that Rob DiCostello when he came in? Or that guy's quite a runner too, isn't he?
Rob is a great champion. He broke the course record at Boston. They called him the man from down under. You know, he's kind of a solidly built guy, bigger body type. His nickname was Tree.
Yeah, I did know that.
His legs were like trees. I mean, he could really hammer the hills. And but a super guy and a coach now in Australia. He's got a degree in exercise physiology. And he really lifted Australian road racing and marathoning. And he comes back to Boston, you know, every few years with a team of runners. And that's what I love about our sport. It's everyone, you know, can run. You know, it doesn't matter. You got to be 18 or over, but all ages are out there, you know, and runners from all over the world. And I love seeing that, you know, see the runners duke it out.
Back to the Fukuoka. I think, are you and Frank the only two Americans that have ever won that?
Frank and I, yes, that's true. It's not a well-known marathon. Tokyo is the biggest, most well-known marathon in Japan. It's a newer marathon, though. Fukuoka is the Japanese Boston, you know, and one other American has taken a major Japanese marathon title. a guy from Massachusetts named Bobby Hodge. Super guy. I saw him a few weeks ago. But I think marathoning is a very big sport in Japan, as is baseball, and so to get an invitation to that marathon was a great honor, but Frank took it 4 times. I took it once, and it was fun. And there are women who have won the major marathons in Japan. Lisa Rainsberger, 2-time Boston champion, has won, I think, the Nagoya Marathon, major marathon in Japan. So it is a big sport over there, and mass participation too. 30,000 runners in Tokyo, and that sort of thing.
And speaking of Japan, I think one of the biggest, couple of your most intense races were against a Japanese runner, Seiko.
Yeah, Toshihiko Seiko. He was their top guy for a long time, and he and I raced a number of times. He beat me at Boston once. I beat him in Boston once. But he is now a coach there. He won Fukuoka 4 times, and super nice guy. Now he's a golfer, I believe. He's into golf. And,
is that right?
A good friend. Yeah, he's a good guy. Last time I saw him was about 10 years ago. I was in Japan for a road race called the Ome 30K. It's a sister city race with the Boston Marathon. So each year, a couple of top Japanese runners will come from the Ome race, and then we send a couple of runners from the Boston Marathon over to Ome, which is held in February every year. And so it's great fun. I ran there once with my very good friend Tom Fleming back in the 70s, and that was the first year we did that kind of a exchange of athletes, But the Japanese came to Boston back in '54, after World War II, and things were really tough, and they got invited to take part in Boston. And so the Japanese runners have always come to Boston because I think they just appreciated that chance to, take part in a worldwide, world-class event like that.
You got to go to the White House after the Boston, is that correct?
Yeah, that is true. That was a shocker, and I think that happens now. The winners of New York or Boston will get invited, or Chicago, to the White House, and I know that when President Obama, and when he was president, and the bombing happened, he commented about how the runners were going to come back stronger than ever at Boston, 2014, and that is the truth. Nothing stops a marathoner. Nothing.
Well,
you know that. You're a 100-miler, Tim, right?
Well, yeah, used to be. Now, like I tell, and I think you can agree with me on this one. As you age and as you can't be as competitive as you used to be. I basically tell everybody that I run for a beer and cookies now and mental therapy. I tell you what, it's my time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, and that's what I love about running. It's simple. Just go to your local running store, find some shoes, try them on, see how they feel, make sure they're not too tight, too small, and go out in your neighborhood, run around the block. That's what I do when I was a beginning runner. Do the Jeff Galloway system where you run a little, then you walk a little, because running is just building your heart, and we can build our hearts much bigger size, about 20% bigger, so you're going to be healthier and you're going to just feel better. So I always felt that way about running, and but sometimes in the racing you can be tricky, but mostly it is a lifetime sport. That's what I love about it,
I want to confirm just a couple other things here. We're going to talk about the store because I was in the store when I was out at Boston, but I do believe you have a degree in special ed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. I was a special ed teacher for 3 years, and 2 years in Everett, Mass., and then I worked at a school in Waltham, Mass., the Fernald School. And one of my buddies in Greater Boston Track Club gave me the clue, the information about Boston College had a special education program, so I got my master's there and did that. A lot of runners were teachers way back, going back 50, 60 years, because that's how we made a living. Then we could compete in the summer, like on the track, or on road racing. And my dad was a teacher, so I was kind of following his footsteps, and I really loved that. I really loved that. It was fun.
And
it's a good job.
It's a tough field. I got to tell you, my wife is now a retired special education teacher, so I know it can be a tough job. High school special ed can be tough, but it can be rewarding as well.
Yeah, definitely rewarding. And I worked at middle school, and it was the beginning of special education in Massachusetts back in the mid-'70s. It took a while, but now we understand much more about what's going on with these young kids and everything, and I think they're doing better than ever. And I've even had a former student come up to me, but what happened to me was people kept saying to me, "Bill, why don't you open a running store near Boston College? Because all the college students run around the reservoir there, right next to the Boston Marathon course." So I finally said, "Well, okay." And what happened was, I would be traveling to a race, like to Fukuoka in Japan, when I was a teacher, and so they have to get a substitute teacher. I couldn't keep doing that, and so we opened the store, my brother Charlie and I, and with the help of friends and all that. And a lot of runners had stores. My friend Tom Fleming did, Don Cardong from Washington State did, Frank Shorter did, Jeff Galloway still has a store down in Atlanta.
I loved your store. I loved your store. It was a museum.
Oh, yeah. Our store, it was Charlie's store, really. And, because he would put up all this stuff from runners around the U.S., around the world, high school level. Like Shalane Flanagan came into the store once in high school and signed something, and American Olympian. And so there's all sorts of runners. I think we all kind of stick together, really. We all kind of cheer each other on, that sort of thing. But Charlie did a great job at the store. He kept it going 35 years.
Let's see. When did it close?
Yeah. It closed about 3-4 years ago, and, our assistant manager, Jason, he passed away. That was real tough because he was a real good friend.
But the store's online now.
Yeah. You could reach us online, and, I was going to, should I give you our email there? Our email address?
Is it www.billrogersrunningcenter.com?
Yeah, or brrc@earthlink.net. You can reach us there, and if anyone wanted a copy of my book, Marathon Man, I'm glad to sign it for them, or if their kids run cross country or track, I could sign it for them. I kind of take my book with me to race expos and stuff. That's what I do. I still run races, but not the marathon,
I'm looking at a copy of it right now. I have your earlier book sitting here right now. I believe the picture on the cover of that is you winning Boston, but I'm not sure. The new book, very informative, Marathon Man. I think it's only been out maybe a couple of years, if that.
Yeah, it came out in 2013.
Okay.
And so it's about about becoming a runner, and why I quit, and because I quit and my brother quit, we couldn't train each other. So we said, well, it's done. If you can't be out there with your teammates, it's not fun. And but it was also about my trying to win Boston, And it took me 3 years, and I did win it. And then after I won it, I thought, well, I'm going to try again. I'm going to try again. And, it is a fun race. Some of my buddies I run with today, they're still doing Boston. They're still pushing. They're these streaker types. They've done it 20 years in a row. And Tim, when I travel to races around the country, the one race marathon jacket I see more than any other is the Boston Marathon jacket, because it's kind of like making the Olympic team. You have to qualify to run Boston.
Right.
So it's a tough one. It's really tough to get in there.
I got to ask you about, I know my personal opinion, that you were always billed as being, tough rivals with Frank Shorter, but I think you were buddies as well, right?
Oh yes, of course we are.
Well,
We're big fans.
shorter, I think, to put it mildly, I think he kind of got screwed at the '76 Olympics when he got the silver,
Yeah,
because wasn't the winner Chapinski later indicted for doping?
yeah. They found his records in the GDR, the German Democratic Republic, or otherwise known as East Germany, and so there was doping done at that time. And it's been an issue. It's always an issue in the sports world. It's tough to crack down and clean up, and because there's money at stake and medals mean money and that sort of thing. So Frank really did get cheated out of that gold medal, I think. I think he would have taken the gold, but most people know this story now. The problem is that the Olympic organization says, if we go back that far to the mid-'70s about medal disputes, then they're going to have to take a look at many more cases, So I would support Frank in his, I consider him to be a two-time Olympic gold medalist.
Okay, yeah, I tell you what, I understand what they're saying about not going back, but it is kind of a bum deal, especially since it's so obvious. And talking Olympics, you must have been crushed in 1980.
Yeah, I was. I was just surprised a little bit because the U.S. is, along with Great Britain and Greece, the original Olympic Games supporters. We always have such phenomenal Olympians and teams. I mean, we're the Winter Olympics are coming up, and we usually produce so many incredible athletes, in all these different sports. So it was a bit of a surprise, but I understood it in a way because it was a classic story, where with Russia and political big story there, and so I can live without going to the Olympics, but I wanted to improve. I had failed terribly when I ran the Olympic Games marathon in '76, so I wanted to improve on that. But you know what? I got to go to the Bics.
I tell you what, us Midwesterners scored on that one. You didn't get to go to the Olympics, but how many times have you run Bix?
I think I've run 37, 38 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, every year since 1980. Yeah, mind-boggler. And but I think some people, it was a tricky thing, and there have been other Olympic boycotts. The Russia boycotted the LA Games in '84. The African nations boycotted the Olympic Games in '76. Politics is for real. It exists in the world, and we all have to deal with it and cope with it the best we can, and that's just the way it is. But it wasn't cancer. You know what I mean? I didn't keel over because I couldn't go, and but I wanted. But it's more of a psychological thing,
right?
And, but it was President Carter. I actually met him, like you had mentioned earlier. I like President Carter. I don't know if that was the right decision or not, but I do know he started working with Habitat for Humanity. I think that's a phenomenal thing. A former president.
Yeah.
This,
good example.
That's pretty cool.
Now, you said when 1980 the boycott wasn't cancer, but you have had a bout with cancer.
Yeah, that's true. I did have. I was hit with prostate cancer about 10 years ago, and but I had good surgeon. I had radiation. I'm doing okay. I'm very happy. Life is good. No complaints whatsoever. I've been lucky.
You're an upbeat guy, though. I tell you what, highs and lows. One of your lows had to have been, I read, where you've been pretty injury free, but you were running and your right tibia snapped.
Yeah, I broke my right leg about 15 years ago when I was 55, and that totally shocked me because I had never broken a bone in my life. I didn't know why I broke my leg. I later kind of came to the conclusion, Tim, that I was low in vitamin D because I have skin cancer in my family, so I would put sunblock on. So I wasn't getting enough vitamin D. Your bones, it wasn't that running is good for your bones, and your knees. It strengthens our body in just about every way. But I tend to be someone who could overdo it a bit. and I think I was racing a lot, and just, I got hit. But you know what? Today the physical therapists are so good. The injuries from running are so generally minor level that you can come back from them. They're usually muscle or tendon slight strains or something. But this shocked me. It did surprise me. So I was out for a while, on crutches. I was in a cast for 3 months. But then you come back, you get in the swimming pool, you start to walk a bit, then you run a little, and body recovers.
You called it your comeback quest. Well, I tell you what, you do make me you make me laugh when you say you tend to overdo it a little bit. And hey, you're talking to this guy on the same. I'm my biggest.
That's true.
I'm my worst enemy usually.
Well, yeah, it's a very tricky thing because I think what it is, Tim, is getting older. We know about athletics and being an athlete when you're 20 years old or 25 or maybe even 30. But when you get older, what about the age 50 or 60 or 70? We want to be active, but how much should we train? We're kind of guinea pigs now, us in the older generation, But I think there's so many people out there. Now, I've heard the figure of 30 million people who are walkers and runners in America. I don't know if that's true, but that's a figure I read once. And I sort of believe it because everywhere I go, these races are huge, and the numbers are, seem to get staying strong. So that's a good sign, That's a very good sign. I love it. But during the 100-miler, when I was a youngster of 27 or 30, I thought of trying to do a long race like that. But then I thought a little more about it. I said, nah.
The only reason
the
only reason I got into it is I could never be fast, and so the longer the race, the easier it got for me. I could
Really?
be out there. Yeah, I could be out there all day, so I didn't mind it. I could be better. I could never be fast in a marathon. I liked them, but I tell you what. Marathons are killers. Marathons are killers. I'd much rather do a 100-miler than a marathon.
Really?
Hey,
I think.
Go ahead.
That's a mind-boggler to me because my mentality is I don't think I'd ever finish. I don't think I don't think I'd finish.
I know you, Bill. I think you could do one right now. Who would you say was your biggest inspiration?
My biggest inspiration, I think, when I was younger, growing up on TV, when I had begun running, I saw the Olympic Games, and I saw, on TV, I saw the Americans like Bob Scholl, who took the gold medal in the Olympic 5,000 meter, and Bill Dellinger take a medal in the 5,000. Billy Mills take the gold medal at the 10,000 meter. This was at Tokyo Olympic Games in '64. But I also saw Bakila, the Olympic champion from Ethiopia in the marathon. And he made running the marathon look easy. And so when I met Andy Burfoot as a college student, he looked like Bakila. He's a white Bakila. He looked like the same, and he ran the same, and he ran just about as fast as him. And so Andy really motivated me a lot, I think it's our friends and our family. They are the motivators. They are the motivators.
Yeah, I tell you, what advice would you give for future runners or runners who want to be as competitive as you were?
I think if you can join a running club, join a running team, or a neighbor who has a similar goal. If you want to take part in certain races, like a 4th of July race, or a Jingle Bell Run, or whatever, in every city or town, there's usually a running club, and like the Corn Belt Running Club in Davenport, a pretty big club, and because once you're out there with other people, it's so much easier.
It's harder to stay in bed when somebody's waiting on you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you get out there, and then it's not so difficult, But mentally, it's always some days it's like, whoa, I think I'll stay inside, and maybe I'll either do. I won't do any. I have an exercise bike I bought after I broke my leg, and in the winter I use that some, So you find different alternatives, and I think that's the key as we get older is to try to find other ways to keep our health and fitness, sort of thing, But if you make it easy, on yourself. Get some good gear. Get mittens, a good winter hat, a good winter suit. And once you get out there and you're running through the woods, along the woods, the edge of the woods, you're glad to be out there.
I tell you what,
changes.
Yeah, I do tell people that once you get outside, it does change. Once you get yourself out there, it does get better. So, I read through some of your different quotes, and it's so true. There's no age limit on fun, and just keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And your shoes are key. So that's why I always say, if you can go to a specialty running store where they, kind of focus on runners and that sort of thing, and get some good shoes you really like, because you want shoes that really work well, because they're the key. You want something that will keep you pretty injury-free and comfortable, no blisters, that sort of thing. Some people run on an indoor track, or they run on a treadmill, in the Midwest, New England, with our tricky winters. And in the South, they do that to beat the heat and humidity, run indoors.
Are you a treadmill guy?
There were no treadmills when I started, Tim. So I never really got into it. I think partly it's because I have one leg longer than the other. I'm a little awkward. Stride on the treadmill, I don't push off so good, 1 foot. So, and also I really like to be outside.
We're same here. I just can't do the treadmill. So, I tell you what. Appearances, though, you get all over. I think last year, like 30 appearances all over the United States. Is that right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I started being able to make my living through the sport, and going to races around the country, and it is fun. I love meeting these runners. Runners, everywhere you go, they're wired. They're happy. I swear, I think I read some quote recently. A friend of mine, he said, medicine has not come up with the medical field has not come up with any medicine that does so much good for people as being active, as your exercise. Exercise to me is kind of a bad word because it's got bad negative connotations.
Yeah.
So it's more, how do you think of yourself? What do you think? Do you think you can do this? And a lot of times people don't think they can, but if their friend was out there with them, suddenly you find you can do this run, or this walk, and I love seeing that and at races. And so it's kind of it's a growing world, this sports world. I have great faith in these sports, these Olympic sports, because they're the participation sports.
Well, a lot of people credit Frank Shorter with starting the running boom, but I credit you, Bill. I
think everyone played their role. And I had fun with it. I still am having fun, and I hope if there are any listeners out there, they'll give it a try, give it a shot. What do you have to lose? You have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain, and come meet me and Joan and maybe Meb and some of the other runners, invited runners at the BIX, at the Expo. Expos are fun. Find some good running gear and celebrate your life.
When you come into the BIX, how long are you usually in town? You come in for just a day or two?
Actually, I come in a little longer for the BIX. I come in like on a Wednesday or Thursday. They usually do a dinner, like for the sponsors. We meet the sponsors and the Corn Belt Running Club, supporters, volunteers, that whole deal. Then we do, I always go out in the river, the Mississippi River with my brother Charlie. We run along the bike path, and check out the course a little. And we go to the kids' run, and you go to the expo a bit, meet the runners, the night before the race, and it's just exciting. It's totally, this sport has so much power to it.
I know you were a big buddy. You were buddies with Ed Froelich, a former director down there for I don't know how many years. Ed has turned over the reins, but you knew that Ed was a ultra marathoner, did you?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I knew he was a runner.
Oh no, we went to
he,
the AMJA 50 miler and 100K, and Ed ran the 100K up in Chicago. So had some pretty good times with Ed. I haven't seen him for a while. I haven't been down to Bix, but the reason I'm asking about when you come into Bix, you'll be at the expo. I've got a good friend in town here. I talked to you last night off the air that her brother ran the Bix 27 times, but tragically passed away about 8 years ago. She made a quilt. She made a quilt out of all of his Bix shirts, and she'd love to have you autograph it. Think we can work that out?
Yeah, definitely. I would be, absolutely. Easy to do. Night before the race, we meet runners, and we'll be at the expo. Joe Bennett Sampson will be there and be glad to sign for this lady. And but that's a great running story. That's running right there. You nailed it.
Yeah, he was he had records here in Erie, and his best time he ran 36 minutes down there at Bix, so he was no slouch. And he was a really good runner. Yeah, real good runner. So, well, he had a license plate that said Bix 7, so he was really into that race. So, we'll track you down this Bix. I promise I won't give your cell phone over the air, though.
Okay. Are you coming to Bix this year?
Well, maybe I should.
Yeah, you definitely should. You should.
So,
you got to do it.
It's been a long time since I've been down there. I just did it a few times, and then I worked it a few times, and we have met a few times over the road. Houston Marathon, you raced down there. You and Patty Catalano won down there. I mean, we've crossed paths a few times. So I am looking forward to seeing you again. I tell you what, I'd love to check in with you again sometime.
Definitely. You got my email and everything, Tim. Just give me a yell. Patty Catalano is now remarried, has 2 kids. She's America's first woman to break the 2-hour and 30-minute barrier in the marathon, set world and American records, a great American champion. She's still running. She is 64 years old. And but definitely we got to meet at the Bix. And, Bring as many runners in as you can. The more the merrier, right?
That's right. That is so true. I tell you what, I could talk to you all night, but I think we're about at the end of the road for tonight, aren't we, Bill?
Tim, it was great to talk with you. You're doing a good job for everybody to get the word out about this great sport, because this is the sport where everyone can get on the line, and we get out there and life is better.
And I tell you what, and they can just go to your website, check the part that says autograph. Yeah, come on, have Bill sign that book for you. Make him earn it, right, folks? Right, Bill?
I'm glad to do it. Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Tim.
Okay, well, I tell you what, we're gonna keep looking for that Boston 75 trophy around here, and I'll let you know if we have any luck. Okay?
That would be fun. Sure fun.
Well, I really appreciate you taking this much time with us, Bill, and we will check in again with you. I'll touch base with you, but thanks so much.
Thank you a lot, Tim. Congrats on that 100-mile. I don't know what that means.
All right. Well, congrats on your career. And one other thing, I don't know if we mentioned it, you're still out there running. I think you told me you're running about 40 miles a week. Is that correct?
Yeah, some weeks less, 30 miles, 20 miles, but, it ebbs and flows. When the weather's better, then it's easier to get out there, and
kind of tough when there's 2 feet of snow, right?
Yeah, this is tricky.
All right, have a great night, Bill.
Thank you, Tim.
All right, I'll
Thank
be talking to you again. Bye now.
See you at the next. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, everybody. That was a long interview, but I think it was well worth it. What a great guy. He's done so much for the Quad City area and for the Bix. And